But want to talk about some news right now. I know there's been so much going on in terms of the debate and that type of stuff. We didn't really get into there have been two tragic shootings, mass shootings that happened this week. The first happened in Houston earlier in the week, over the weekend. A lawyer snapped, I guess, and shot up, basically pulled a submachine gun, I think it was, out of his fancy car, and shot a bunch of people up. And he was in Nazi uniform. From Friends, from an article I was reading earlier, they talked about how he had actually collected Nazi paraphernalia. What's interesting is that while he was in college, he actually helped start a Jewish fraternity. But they said that it was they always found it odd that he had collected Nazi paraphernalia. I've heard that people do that. I really don't understand. But he was in a Nazi uniform at the time of the shooting. And apparently there were some issues with his law firm, and he had been, they parted ways. So there was a convo I was a part of on Twitter about how, this wasn't labeled an act of terrorism or anything like that. I mean, let's just be real. It's domestic terrorism, whether there's a political purpose behind it or not. When someone uses certain imagery to invoke fear and just attacks, wildly the population like that, that's terror, right? And the conversation was like, well, he's white, so and someone remarked, that they had read someplace that he was Indian American, and I actually did see a piece earlier today that buried in it said he was born in India and had come here later on for school. Not that the race of the shooter should not matter, but we do so often see that there are certain scenarios where there's certain narratives when people come from certain places, whether they're people of color from here in the United States, or if they're Middle Eastern descent. In many instances, they are labeled and categorized in a certain way. So that was one case that happened this week. And then just today in South Carolina, there's a shooting at an elementary school. A teenage boy, I believe they said he was armed with a handgun, shot two students. Thankfully there were no fatalities at the school, but apparently he killed his father before going into elementary school. And it was saying that I wasn't clear from the two articles, the two pieces I tried to, get as much information as possible, to be able to talk to you all about it coherently, but it wasn't clear whether or not it was his school itself or just another school. But it said that he had actually been expelled from school for having a hatchet previously. So, there's a lot of conversation about gun control and gun violence and things of that nature, but we continue to have this uptick in these incidences. And while I agree that there is a need for common sense gun reform in this country, at the same time, we do have these occurrences. It's a lot bigger than just passing some legislation. We have the issue of culture. We have an issue with the way people and the value of life and how people interact. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to necessarily say this is a mental health problem, because I don't want to disparage the real struggles and difficulties challenges that people actually go through. But at the same time, there's something more than just we need more laws or better laws, because in some cases, the things that are being proposed would not prevent any of these two incidences. So that was, I try. There's no way to kind of build up to either one of those stories, but I did think they were at least important to mention. But as we move forward, we have seen an increase, but at the same time, we have seen an erosion in culture to the point where it just seems like people are not getting, whether it's needed services or what the case may be, but there's definitely something going on in American society as a whole that is making this more prevalent, it seems. And I think our obsession with guns, like I said, it's a cultural issue, I think, as much, or if not more so, than it is a legal issue. But there are certainly places with lax gun laws. I mean, whether or not the father actually, because I know, like I said, having lived in West Virginia, before, I've talked about this before. I know plenty of friends who own weapons, all types of weapons, and whose children, even when they're younger, are familiar with how to use them, you know, with proper upkeep, you know. So I know a lot of folks who do gun safety with their kids and their families and stuff, but yet and still we still see, and I mean, and again, I don't know that this necessarily happened in this person's household or not, but we still see these a rise in these incidences, and I don't know what correlation, if any, there is, but it's something that we need to actually have real discussions about, and not just writing people off as being crazy gun nuts. Like, I think that's rather dismissive